Imagine taking 18 million active voter registration records, right, and just dumping them directly into this massive federal immigration database.
Just handing them all over.
Yeah, the whole list. And bracing for this army of federal agents to just sweep in and purge the lists.
Which is quite the mental image.
It really is.
Yeah.
But then you find out the law actually, explicitly forbids those agents from doing so.
Right.
So today on the Deep Dive, we are tracing exactly how a single explosive viral quote about ICE and voter rolls collided with the actual bureaucratic plumbing of the SAVE Act. Welcome to the show, by the way.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, the gap between what the internet thinks this piece of legislation does and what the legal text actually dictates is, well, it's massive.
Oh, totally.
And because this topic sits squarely at that hyperpolarized intersection of, immigration enforcement and election security, our source material today is inherently charged.
Extremely charged. I mean, we are pulling directly from the literal legislative text of the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, the SAVE Act, alongside media analysis of the viral moment that set this whole debate off.
Plus that massive real-world case study from Texas.
Right, exactly. And look, because this topic is so intense, you're going to hear a lot of right-wing and left-wing rhetoric reflected in these sources.
You really are.
So I just want to say right up front, our mission here isn't to validate either side's political talking points.
Definitely not.
We're not taking sides. We just want to strip the emotion away and impartially report on the raw mechanics of the law.
Just looking at the actual pipes.
Yeah. We just want to figure out how the machine actually works.
And to understand the mechanics of that machine, we really have to look at the catalyst that forced everyone to pay attention to it in the first place.
Right.
We are going back to Tuesday, March 10th, 2026.
Yes.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is doing this press gaggle outside the Senate.
Right. He's just taking questions on the Republican-backed SAVE Act, and he drops a sentence that instantly just detonates across the digital ecosystem.
It really did.
He says, regarding the legislation, he says, and I'm quoting here, it allows IC to kick tens of millions of people off the voter rolls.
Such a huge claim.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the life cycle of this single quote is fascinating.
It really is, yeah.
Because if you try to find a pristine, high-definition clip of this exact moment in the official C-SPAN archives for March 10th, you can't. It's not there.
Right. It didn't make the formal floor archives because it occurred during that informal hallway interaction with reporters.
Ah, gotcha.
C-SPAN obviously covered his earlier formal floor speeches, like back in February 2026 when he called the bill Jim Crow 2.0 and declared it dead on arrival. But this specific soundbite lived entirely in the wild.
And by in the wild, we mean it completely took over platforms like Facebook and YouTube.
Oh, completely.
Like within hours, conservative outlets like Blaze Media and various political commentators were sharing the clip.
Right.
And then on the flip side, progressive pages like Occupy Democrats were blasting it out as this, dire warning.
Yeah.
And the quote itself started mutating as it went viral, too.
Oh, the game of telephone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks to transcription errors, or just the internet being the internet, tens of millions suddenly became tens of billions in some prominent comment threads.
Tens of billions.
Yeah, billions.
What's fascinating here is how the specific linguistic payload of that, combining the phrase tens of millions with the acronym ICE, perfectly activated the confirmation biases of entirely opposed political camps.
Wow. Yeah.
It is basically a masterclass in unintentional rhetorical synthesis.
Okay, how so? Break down that payload for us.
Well, for critics of the SAVE Act, the acronym ICE instantly signals aggressive federal enforcement, right?
Sure.
Border sweeps, democratic overreach, all of that. So pairing it with the massive scale of tens of millions turns a piece of bureaucratic legislation into an apocalyptic warning of mass disenfranchisement.
Right, it sounds terrifying.
Exactly. But for supporters of the bill, the reaction was the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah, they seized on tens of millions as this, inadvertent confession.
I see.
To them, it validated their deepest anxieties about election security, turning the quote into supposed proof from a top official that non-citizens are already on the rolls in massive numbers.
Oh, wow. So it functioned perfectly as a Rorschach test.
Pretty much.
People heard exactly what they needed to hear to validate their existing worldview.
Spot on.
But the entire premise of Schumer's quote and, the panic or validation it caused relies on a very specific mechanical assumption.
Right. Which is
that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement actually has the operational authority to reach into a state's database and delete voters.
Which brings us back to the text. We have to ask the fundamental question, does the law actually give ICE the keys to the state voter rolls?
Right. So if the text of the law supposedly creates this direct pipeline between ICE and your local voter roll, the obvious question is whether that pipeline actually exists in the legislation.
Let's look at it.
Yeah, let's look at the structural pathway of the House-passed SAVE Act from February 2026.
So when you read the actual legislative text, the connection between the voter rolls and ICE is not a straight line at all.
Okay.
It involves critical degrees of separation. The mandate established by the SAVE Act requires states to submit their voter registration data to the Department of Homeland Security,
DHS, yeah.
specifically to a system called SVE, which stands for Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements.
Wait, before we go further, what actually is the SAVE-E system?
Good question.
Because it didn't just pop into existence for this specific election security bill.
No, not at all. SAVE has been around for decades.
Okay.
It is primarily used by federal, state, and local agencies to check immigration status before granting public benefits.
Oh, like what kind of benefits?
Things like Medicaid, housing assistance, or issuing driver's licenses. It's a very established information sharing hub. Under this new legislation, states are mandated to use this existing hub to verify citizenship and flag non-citizens on their voter registries.
Okay, so the state pings the DHS SAVE system.
Right.
Where does the federal enforcement mechanism kick in? Like, when does ICE show up?
So the law states that if the SAVE system flags an individual as unlawfully present or a non-citizen, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall conduct an investigation.
Shall conduct an investigation.
Yes, to determine whether to initiate removal proceedings under Section 239 of the Immigration and Nationality Act. That is the mandatory referral pathway written into the bill.
Wait, I need to push back on that for a second.
Go ahead.
You just cited the mandatory referral pathway, but notice what acronym is completely missing from that entire sequence. ICE.
Right.
If DHS is mandating these checks and ICE is a component of DHS, aren't we just splitting hairs here?
Well,
Because to a voter, the distinction between one DHS agency and another might seem like a meaningless bureaucratic shell game. Why does that second degree of separation actually matter legally?
it matters fundamentally because of how database architecture and legal jurisdictions actually function within the federal government.
Okay, explain that.
So the SAVE program is operated by USCIS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services.
Right.
USCIS handles lawful immigration, naturalization, and the administration of benefits.
Gotcha.
IC handles enforcement, detention, and deportation. They are two completely distinct components of DHS with entirely different mandates.
So they don't share a brain, so to speak.
Exactly. Data sharing between the USCIS SAVE program and ICE happens downstream, strictly on a case-by-case basis.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the political rhetoric makes it sound like ICI agents are sitting at terminals just hitting delete on state voter files.
Which is absurd.
Right. Let's update how we think about this using an analogy.
Okay.
Think of the state voter registry like a nightclub.
A nightclub, I like it.
Under the SAVE Act, ICE isn't the bouncer at the door checking everyone's ID.
Right.
USCIS's SAVE-E program is the bouncer.
The bouncer with the clipboard.
Exactly. ICE is only called in later on a case-by-case basis if the bouncer flags a specific violation and escalates it to them. ICE does not get direct bulk access to purge the guest list.
That is a much more precise way to visualize the mechanism, yeah.
Thanks.
The state initiates the query, USCIS processes it, and returns a flag.
Just a yes or no.
Right, essentially a Boolean flag on citizenship status. If that flag indicates unlawful presence, then and only then is an investigation triggered under Section 239 of the Immigration and Nationality Act.
Okay, let's drill into Section 239 then. What does an investigation under that section actually entail?
Good point, because
investigation can mean a bureaucrat just looking at a spreadsheet, or it can mean federal agents literally knocking on doors.
yeah, it's a loaded word.
Yeah.
So Section 239 governs the issuance of a notice to appear, which is the formal charging document that initiates removal proceedings in immigration court.
A notice to appear.
Right. An investigation in this context means federal officers have to establish a legal burden of proof that the individual is removable under immigration law.
So it's not automatic.
Not at all. It requires gathering evidence, verifying identity, and cross-referencing multiple federal databases. It is a highly legalistic, individualized process.
Oh, I see.
An algorithmic flag from the SAVE database is a starting point, sure, but it is not sufficient on its own to issue a notice to appear or deport someone.
Which brings us to a major point of contention in our sources regarding this red herring debate.
Right, the blue states argument.
Yeah, because the flow of data is strictly USCIS, referring individual cases downstream to ICE, and there is absolutely zero data flowing backward from ICE directly into the state voter rolls to alter them.
None.
Are critics just invoking ICE's name to scare people? Like, is the threat of an ICE purge just a total fabrication?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can see why both the rhetoric and the reality are so deeply entrenched.
Okay.
The SAVE Act unquestionably creates a structural mandatory pathway that can lead to ICE involvement.
Because of that shall investigate line.
Exactly. If USCIS flags someone, the law dictates an investigation shall be conducted. So the potential for ICE's enforcement and removal operations to step in and initiate deportation proceedings is very real.
Okay, so it's not a complete lie.
No, you cannot dismiss that as a fabrication.
Yeah.
There are real downstream consequences for individuals flagged by the system.
Right.
But characterizing it as an ICE purge of the voter rolls fundamentally misrepresents the architecture of the law.
Right.
The primary actors maintaining the voter rolls are the states and the USCIS SAVE program. ICE acts purely as a potential downstream enforcement arm for immigration violations.
They aren't election officials.
Exactly. They have zero authority and, frankly, zero technical ability to administer state election rolls or delete a voter's registration.
Wow. It's a classic case of political rhetoric flattening a complex bureaucratic process.
Flattens it completely.
The law builds this multi-step, walled-off data pipeline, and a viral quote just squashes it all together to say ICE kicks you off. But, theory and legislative text are one thing. We can debate degrees of separation and data flow diagrams all day long.
True.
The real question is whether that architectural buffer actually holds up under extreme pressure.
When theory meets reality.
Exactly. And to see that, we don't even need to guess, because Texas literally put this exact federal machinery to a massive stress test in October 2025.
The Texas Voter Integrity Initiative?
That's the one.
It is the perfect real-world laboratory for everything we've been discussing. It operated on a scale that really forces us to look past the theory.
And the scale of this was unprecedented.
Unbelievable scale.
I mean, Texas didn't just check a handful of suspicious registrations or new applicants.
No, they went all in.
They took their entire state voter registration list, over 18 million active records, and ran it against the federal citizenship data. 18 million.
The logistics behind achieving that are genuinely staggering.
I can't even imagine.
To pull this off, Texas had to establish a formal memorandum of agreement, or MOA, with DHS and USCIS to get expanded access to the SAVE database.
Okay, so they had to ask for a special permission.
Right. They successfully negotiated bulk query access, allowing them to push millions of records through the system simultaneously.
Wow.
They also negotiated the critical ability to perform searches using full or partial Social Security numbers, which is vital.
Why is that vital?
Because state voter rolls often don't have a complete, pristine set of data points for every single person.
Oh, sure. Records get messy.
Exactly.
And they demanded speed, too.
They did.
They secured a 48-hour turnaround time for responses from the federal government on these bulk queries.
Which is incredibly fast for the federal government.
Yeah, no kidding. Plus, they managed to negotiate all of this access at zero cost to the state.
Quite the deal.
So they take these 18 million records and they push the query to the USCIS endpoint. They basically ask the federal database, are any of these 18 million people non-citizens?
And what came back?
Right. What were the results?
Out of over 18 million records queried, the FESIV system identified 2,724 potential non-citizens on the rolls.
Let's pause on that math for just a second.
It's a striking number.
2,724 out of 18 million is roughly 0.015%.
A tiny fraction.
It is. It's a tiny fraction.
Yeah.
But for those 2,724 individuals, what happens next?
This is a critical moment.
Because if the viral rhetoric from Chuck Schumer earlier in the year was perfectly accurate, this is the exact moment where the buffer collapses and ICE kicks down the door to purge those names.
This raises an important question about jurisdiction and the realities of election administration.
Right.
Because ICE did not swoop in.
They didn't.
There was no federal sweep of the Texas voter rolls.
Right. The buffer held.
It held perfectly.
The structural pathway we outlined earlier functioned exactly as designed. The federal government supplied the Boolean flag, the verification data, But those 2,724 files were sent back down the chain to the local county registrars.
Exactly. The administration of the voter roll, the ultimate legal decision to investigate an individual and potentially remove their name, was pushed back down to the local, county-level election officials.
So local folks handle it.
Yes, Texas law dictates how those local officials must proceed. They have to send a formal notice to the voter, usually giving them 30 days to provide documentary proof of citizenship,
Like what?
like a passport or a birth certificate.
So the federal database is basically just acting as a highly sophisticated tip line.
That's a great way to put it.
It flags a discrepancy, but the local human official is the one who has to mail the letter, wait for the response, review the physical documents, and ultimately execute the removal if the voter fails to prove their
That's
citizenship.
precisely. The state and the counties maintain absolute control over the actual voter lists.
Right.
The SAVE Act enhances the data they use to verify those lists, but it does not transfer the administrative power over elections to federal immigration enforcement.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this narrative full circle for you listening.
Let's do it.
We started today with a viral quote from March 2026. A warning that the SAVE Act allows ICE to kick tens of millions of people off the voter rolls.
A soundbite designed to sound an alarm.
Exactly. Which then ping-ponged across the internet, getting exaggerated into billions and being weaponized by both sides of the aisle to confirm their deepest political suspicions.
And then we looked at the actual plumbing.
We did. We saw that while the SAVE Act mandates citizenship checks and creates a downstream pathway for potential immigration enforcement, the architecture of the law specifically requires states to query USCIS, not IC.
Right.
ICI operates on a case-by-case basis under strict legal burdens, completely walled off from direct access to alter-state voter databases.
They don't have the keys.
And finally, we grounded all of that architectural theory in the 18 million voter reality check from Texas.
A massive test.
They didn't find tens of millions of non-citizens. They found 2,724 potential flags.
Out of 18 million.
And those flags didn't trigger an IC sweep. They triggered administrative notices sent out by local human election officials. For you listening, this is exactly why doing these deep dives matters. In an era where a single hyper-partisan quote can dominate your feed and warp your understanding of federal law, knowing how the plumbing actually works is your best defense.
It really is.
It empowers you to see past the viral rhetoric and grasp how these systems practically function.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on the sheer scale of that Texas case study.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
We saw Texas achieve 48-hour turnarounds on bulk data queries with the federal SAVE database.
Yeah, lightning fast.
Has these federal endpoints become more seamlessly integrated with state voter systems, processing tens of millions of records in mere hours? We have to consider the human bottleneck at the end of that data pipeline.
Oh, the local officials.
Right. What happens when a local county registrar's paper records fundamentally conflict with a digital flag generated by a massive federal database?
That is a great question.
As this verification technology scales across all 50 states, who will ultimately hold the true practical power over a citizen's right to vote? The algorithmic flag generated by the federal database, or the judgment of the local election official sitting in a county office?
It is a phenomenal question. When the data moves that fast, the human element becomes both the weakest link and the most vital safeguard.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.